The scent of pine and roasting turkey always used to feel like a warm hug. Tonight, it's a suffocating blanket. Laughter, sharp and bright, bounces off the dining room walls. My brother, his wife, their two perfect children. My sister, regaling her new boyfriend with some undoubtedly embellished story. And my parents, presiding at either end of the long mahogany table, beaming like benevolent monarchs. The crystal glasses glitter. The silverware gleams. A Norman Rockwell painting, if Rockwell had a slightly sadistic streak. My mother, her smile a little too tight around the edges, begins the ritual. James, darling, this one's for you, a heavy, elegantly wrapped box. My brother's booming laugh. And Sarah, my sister-in-law, her eyes sparkling. Then for my sister, then her boyfriend, then each of the grandchildren, squeals of delight filling the air. Each gift announced, presented with a flourish. A performance. The pile of discarded wrapping paper grows. My space on the table, directly opposite my mother, remains conspicuously, painfully bare. The clinking of my fork against my plate as I pretend to adjust a stray green bean sounds like a gunshot in the sudden lull. My mother catches my eye, a flicker of something, triumph? Malice? Before her gaze slides away. My father clears his throat, oblivious, or perhaps just a master of feigned ignorance. It's a silence specifically carved out for me, an absence made tangible. The warmth of the room turns to ice against my skin. It's not just being forgotten, it's being deliberately, publicly erased. If you've ever felt that chill, that specific kind of invisible ache in a room full of people who are supposed to love you, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It means more than you can imagine. There was a time years ago now, it feels like a different lifetime, when this house felt like home. Or, at least, the closest approximation I knew. I was the quiet one, the responsible one. The one who remembered to send birthday cards, to call on anniversaries, to check if Dad had taken his medication. My brother, James, was the golden boy, charming his way through life, every mistake easily forgiven. My sister, Chloe, was the dramatic one, flitting from one crisis to another, always needing a rescue. I was the anchor, or so I thought. Maybe I was just the doormat. My desires were modest. A little acknowledgement. A sense of belonging that wasn't conditional on my utility. I wanted to feel seen, not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. But their normal, their comfortable, boisterous family life was built on the bedrock of my silent contributions, my swallowed disappointments. The chipped paint on the windowsill, the slightly loose banister, the hum of the old refrigerator. These were the constants. And me, tidying up after every family gathering, mediating squabbles, the perpetual designated driver because you don't mind, do you, dear? No, I never minded. Or at least I never said I did. What was the point? The disruption, when it came, wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow leak, a creeping dampness in the foundations of our already precarious family structure. It arrived via phone call late one Tuesday. My mother's voice, usually so assured, so commanding when doling out instructions or critiques, was thin, papery, laced with an unfamiliar tremor.
A praktisa tramo, ide latere alija.
Darling, she begun, the endearment already setting off alarm bells. Endearments were currency, spent only when something was desperately needed. There's a bit of a problem with the house. The house. Their castle. The backdrop to every childhood memory, every Christmas morning, every shouted argument and tearful reconciliation. The symbol of their achievement, their stability in the community. The bank, she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if the walls themselves might betray her. They're talking about, well, foreclosure. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and potent. They'd remortgaged it years ago. An investment opportunity. Dad had boomed at the time. All confidence and bluster. An ostrich farm. Or was it rare earth minerals? The details were always vague, the outcome always disastrously predictable. Now, That particular ghost had come back to rattle its chains. Their credit was shot. Another loan was out of the question. "We don't know what to do," she'd wailed, the practiced tremor giving way to genuine, albeit self-serving, panic. "You're our only hope, darling. Your credit is so good. You've always been so sensible with money." That phrase, "your credit is so good," wasn't a compliment. It was a target. And sensible with money just meant I didn't spend what I didn't have, a concept seemingly alien to them. The weight of that "only you," that "our only hope," settled onto my shoulders like a lead cloak. It was the summons I'd somehow always known was coming, the ultimate test of my filial devotion, a test designed for me to fail in a way that benefited them. I didn't know then that agreeing would be the first step into a carefully laid trap, baited with guilt and familial obligation. The numbers were staggering. I remember sitting at my small kitchen table, papers spread out, a calculator in my hand, the lukewarm tea forgotten beside me. The original mortgage, the second one, the accrued interest, the penalties. It was a monument to their financial recklessness. My parents, masters of appearances, had woven a narrative of comfortable, middle-class success. Beneath it, the truth was a tangled mess of bad decisions, deferred responsibilities, and an almost pathological aversion to consequence. Taking over the mortgage, putting my name on the line, seemed, in that moment of manufactured crisis, like the only solution. The only way to save them from the street, to preserve the family home, the repository of so much stuff. So many memories, mostly theirs. "It's just for a little while, sweetheart," my father had declared, his voice regaining its customary boom now that my solution, was in sight. He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that was probably meant to be reassuring but felt more like a brand. "Just until we get back on our feet. We'll pay you back every penny, of course." Of course. I signed the papers. My signature, looped and ordinary, felt like it was sealing a pact written in invisible ink, its true clauses hidden from me. The bank manager, a man with tired eyes, had given me a look that was part pity, part professional detachment. He'd seen this story before. The payments started immediately. My meticulously planned budget, the one that allowed for a small savings deposit each month, for the occasional weekend trip, for the dream of one day owning a tiny place of my own, shattered. I cut back. The gym membership went first. Then the slightly more expensive organic groceries. My car, already aging, would have to last longer. New clothes were an unthinkable luxury. Vacations became a distant memory. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was the right thing to do. I tried in those early months to talk to them about a budget, about their spending, about the sheer, terrifying amount of money that was now flowing from my account to theirs, or rather, to the bank that owned their house but now held me responsible for it. My mother would wave a dismissive hand, adorned with freshly manicured nails, a weekly expense, I noted with a tightening in my chest. "Oh, don't you worry your pretty little head about all that, dear. We've managed this far, haven't we?" Managed by digging a deeper hole for me to fill, apparently. My father would puff up, indignant. "Are you suggesting we're irresponsible? We're doing our best in a very difficult situation, the difficult situation they had created, and from which I was now single-handedly trying to extricate them." Their best seemed to involve a lot of meals out, new gadgets, and a complete unwillingness to alter their lifestyle in any meaningful way. The cognitive dissonance was breathtaking. I was working longer hours, picking up freelance projects that left me exhausted, my social life dwindling to nothing.
They were not.
The phrase "back on their feet" became a cruel joke, a perpetually receding horizon. It never arrived. Instead, new symbols of their unrepentant spending habits began to appear, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. A sleek, new SUV in the driveway, leased, I discovered later, after a bit of discreet online sleuthing. My mother explained it away with a breezy, "Oh, the old one was just getting so unreliable, dear. And we got such a good deal." A deal I was subsidizing. Lavish dinner parties resumed at the house. Photos splashed across social media with cheerful, oblivious captions. Another wonderful evening with friends. The friends who presumably thought my parents were still comfortably well off, blissfully unaware that the roof over their heads was being paid for by their sensible daughter, who was eating instant noodles for the third time that week. Then came the generous loan to my brother, James, and his wife for a down payment on a larger house. They needed the space, with the kids growing up so fast, my father announced proudly, as if he'd funded it from his own rediscovered solvency. My sister, Chloe, suddenly sported a new designer handbag and a wardrobe refresh. Mum felt sorry for me. Things have been so tough, she confided, without a hint of irony. Tough for her, perhaps, in her world of manufactured dramas. Meanwhile, my own toughness was being tested to its absolute limit. When I dared to bring up the mortgage payments, the sheer, crushing weight of them, my mother's face would crumple into an expression of wounded martyrdom. Must you always be so practical, darling? Can't you see we're under enormous stress? Her stress, it seemed, was best alleviated by retail therapy, funded by my sacrifice. My father would adopt his stern, disappointed tone. We raised you to be more understanding than this. More generous. The gaslighting was relentless, an art form they had perfected over decades. My reality, the dwindling savings, the mounting anxiety, the quiet desperation, was denied, dismissed, invalidated at every turn. My resentment began to curdle, solidifying into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. It was a constant companion, that knot. It was there when I woke up, when I dragged myself to work, when I lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, the numbers running in an endless, tormenting loop. The requests for a little extra started to come more frequently. The property taxes are due, dear, and we're a bit short. The boiler's making a funny noise. Could you just... Each request was a fresh twist of the knife. I was drowning, and they were holding my head under the water, all while telling me what a strong swimmer I was. The turning point wasn't a single, dramatic event. It was more like the slow, agonizing discovery of a terminal illness. It began with a misplaced envelope. I was at their house, ostensibly for Sunday dinner, but actually to fix a leaking tap in their bathroom, another task that had fallen to me. I was looking for a specific wrench in the cluttered drawers of the spare room sideboard, a piece of furniture that had become a dumping ground for forgotten bills and miscellaneous junk. Tucked beneath a pile of old magazines, I found it, a thick sheaf of bank statements. Not mine.
Theirs.
My hands trembled as I pulled them out. I knew I shouldn't look. It was an invasion of their privacy, a line I hadn't yet crossed. But something, a cold premonition, a desperate need to understand the full extent of the madness I was caught in, compelled me. I sat on the edge of the dusty spare bed, the floral bedspread scratchy beneath me, and I read. It wasn't just careless spending. It wasn't just an inability to budget. It was a deliberate, calculated siphoning of funds. Money that could have gone towards the mortgage. Money that could have eased the crushing burden they'd placed on me. Instead, it was a litany of luxuries. Online shopping sprees from high-end boutiques, payments to a cruise line, hefty cash withdrawals with no discernible purpose, significant gifts to James and Chloe, meticulously documented. The casual cruelty of it, the blatant, astonishing disrespect, stole the breath from my lungs. This wasn't just neglect of their responsibilities. It was an active, ongoing exploitation of my goodwill, my love, my misplaced sense of duty. They weren't just struggling, they were thriving, feasting on my financial well-being like vultures on a carcass. The carefully constructed illusion I'd clung to, the idea of a family bound by love and mutual support, however flawed, shattered. It crumbled into dust, revealing something ugly and twisted beneath. The warmth I'd desperately tried to preserve, the hope for their approval, for some glimmer of recognition, it just died, extinguished, replaced by a cold, clear, unforgiving certainty. A switch flipped deep inside me. The daughter who had tried so hard, for so long, to be good, to be helpful, to be what they wanted her to be, ceased to exist in that dusty spare room. Someone else, someone colder, sharper, and much, much angrier, began to take her place. The air in their house suddenly felt different, heavier, tainted. Every cheerful photograph on the wall, every lovingly polished piece of furniture, seemed like a prop in an elaborate, cruel stage play. I finished fixing the tap, my movements mechanical, my mind racing. The usual Sunday dinner chatter washed over me, unheard. My mother's complaints about the price of organic vegetables, my father's pontificating about politics, James's boasting about his latest career success, Chloe's dramatic sighs about her latest romantic entanglement. It was all just noise. Meaningless static. I stopped making excuses for them, both to myself and to the few friends I still had who wondered why I was always broke and exhausted. I saw them with a chilling clarity. Users, entitled, profoundly selfish, cocooned in a shared delusion of their own blamelessness. And I was their chief enabler, the willing fool who kept the whole charade afloat. The stress, no longer buffered by denial or hope, began to take a serious toll. Sleep became a battlefield, my mind a relentless arena of anxieties and calculations. I'd wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, the weight of the mortgage pressing down on me like a physical thing. Headaches became a constant companion. My appetite vanished. I was running on fumes, a ghost in my own life. I decided to try one last time. One final attempt at reason, at connection, at appealing to whatever shred of decency might still exist within them. I arranged to sit down. Not at their house, not on their turf. I chose a neutral cafe, a place with no memories, no emotional leverage. I came prepared. I had spreadsheets. Bank statements, mine this time. A carefully rehearsed speech. Calmly, methodically, I laid it all out. My income, my expenses, the exact amount I was paying for their house, the impact it was having on my life, my health, my future. I showed them, in black and white, the sacrifice. My mother began to cry. Not tears of empathy or remorse. They were tears of pure, unadulterated self-pity. "How could you be so cruel?" she sobbed, dabbing at her eyes with a lace-trimmed handkerchief she'd probably bought with money I'd earned. "Bringing all this up trying to make us feel guilty. After everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done for me." The irony was a bitter pill. My father, true to form, resorted to anger. His face flushed a dark, mottled red. "Ungrateful," he boomed, drawing stares from the other patrons. "This is how you repay us? By throwing figures in our faces? Do you want to see us out on the street? Is that what you want?" The mortgage was in my name. The debt was legally, unequivocally mine. That was the crux of their leverage, the chain they had so cleverly wrapped around my neck. The house, however, was theirs in every emotional, historical, and practical sense. They lived in it. They enjoyed it. Yet, they felt no compunction, no responsibility whatsoever for the agreement they had so tearfully, so desperately pressed upon me. They expected me to carry them, indefinitely, without complaint, while they continued to live their lives unburdened. The injustice of it was a suffocating weight. All seemed lost, because the only way to save myself, to reclaim my life, was to detonate the bomb they had strapped to me, and in doing so, destroy their comfort, their carefully curated image, their entire world. And some small, stupid, deeply conditioned part of me, the part that still yearned for the family I wished I had, still flinched from inflicting that kind of pain, even on them, even now. The cafe air grew thick with unspoken accusations, with the bitter taste of years of resentment. I looked at their faces, my mother's tear-streaked, petulant, my father's tight with fury, and I saw strangers. Strangers I had sacrificed everything for. And in that moment, something inside me finally, irrevocably, broke. Or perhaps it was mended. I walked home from that cafe, the spreadsheets still clutched in my hand, the echo of their accusations ringing in my ears. But beneath the anger, beneath the hurt, a new feeling was beginning to stir, a cold, hard resolve. I remember looking at my own bank account that night. The numbers were pitiful, a stark testament to years of financial hemorrhaging. I was working 2 jobs, A day job that paid the bills, or tried to, and a string of freelance gigs that filled my evenings and weekends, leaving me perpetually exhausted, a shadow of my former self. And for what? To maintain their lifestyle of blissful ignorance while mine crumbled into dust and debt. The official notices from the bank, the ones with the scary red lettering, had started arriving at my small apartment with increasing frequency. Notice of intent to foreclose, they were addressed to me, of course. My name was on the loan. My credit was on the line. The irony was a constant, bitter companion. I was facing homelessness because I was paying for a house I didn't even live in. There was a moment, a fleeting, desperate thought that I could scramble. I could beg the bank for forbearance. I could take out another loan, a personal one, at a ruinous interest rate, to cover the shortfall. I could sell the few remaining possessions I had of any value. I could sink even deeper into the quagmire. But then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. My mother, beaming, showing off an expensive new handbag. A little treat, I deserved it. My father, tagged in a photo at a local golf club, raising a glass, the picture of bonhomie. And the new resolve inside me solidified, hardening from a cold ember into a shard of ice. No more. This ends.
Now.
If they refused to face reality, if they were so determined to live in their fantasy world propped up by my misery, then I would become the agent of their awakening. A rude, brutal awakening. I let the next mortgage payment deadline pass. Unpaid. The calls from the bank became more urgent. I let them go to voicemail. Another payment deadline.
Missed.
The official notices, the ones that spoke of auctions and eviction dates, became thicker, more ominous. Each one was a nail in the coffin of their comfortable, oblivious existence. I collected them meticulously, stored them in a plain manila envelope, kept them safe, and I waited. Christmas was approaching. The season of goodwill, of family, of giving. The irony was so thick, so potent, it was almost a physical presence in my small, sparsely decorated apartment. My mother, in one of her brief, perfunctory calls, had already outlined the Christmas dinner plans. Everyone will be here, darling. Don't be late. And do try to be a bit more cheerful this year, won't you? Cheerful.
Right.
I had my own plans for Christmas dinner. A gift, of sorts. One they wouldn't be expecting. One they richly deserved. The anticipation was a strange mix of dread and a grim, unfamiliar satisfaction. The countdown had begun. The smell of pine and roasting turkey, usually a comfort, now felt like the cloying scent of a trap about to be sprung. The laughter from my siblings and their families, usually a source of mild irritation, now sounded like the oblivious chatter of lambs before the slaughter. My mother, at the head of the table, her smile brittle, surveyed her domain. My father, at the other end, was already 3 glasses of wine in, his voice booming with forced bonhomie. The ritual began, as it always did. My mother, playing the gracious hostess, the benevolent matriarch, handed out the brightly wrapped packages. James, darling, this is for you, a new set of golf clubs, I noted. And Sarah, my sweet, a delicate jewelry box. My sister Chloe unwrapped a luxurious cashmere shawl. Her new boyfriend, a bewildered-looking young man named Mark, received an expensive bottle of single malt whiskey. The grandchildren, of course, were showered with toys, their squeals of delight echoing through the room, a soundtrack to the unfolding farce. Each gift was presented with a little speech, a little flourish, a performance designed to highlight their generosity, their thoughtfulness. The pile of discarded wrapping paper grew on the antique sideboard, a colorful testament to their largesse. My space on the table, directly opposite my mother, remained conspicuously, pointedly bare. Not a single small token. Not even a card. The clinking of cutlery, the murmur of conversation, it all seemed to fade into a dull roar in my ears. I focused on the slightly congealed gravy on my plate, pushing a roasted potato through it with my fork. The air around me grew thick, charged with unspoken meaning. This wasn't a simple oversight. This was a statement. A deliberate, calculated act of exclusion, performed in front of the entire family. You are nothing. You do not matter. My mother caught my eye for a fleeting second, a flicker of something cold, triumphant, in her gaze before she turned to laugh at something my father said. He, of course, was oblivious, or pretended to be. It was their classic double act, her subtle cruelty, his willful ignorance. The last gift was unwrapped. A brief, satisfied silence descended, the kind that follows a particularly successful theatrical production. Perhaps they expected me to weep, to create a scene, to beg for a crumb of their attention. That's what the old me would have done. Cried quietly in the bathroom later. Added it to the long list of hurts I carried. But the old me wasn't here tonight. I took a slow sip of water. The glass felt cool, steady in my hand. I reached down beside my chair, for the handbag I'd placed there. Inside, nestled amongst my keys and wallet, was the manila envelope. Stiff. Official. Heavy with consequence. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, cutting through the post-gift lull. Every head turned. I do have something for you both.
Mom.
Dad. I placed the envelope on the polished mahogany table, directly between their plates. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. My mother's perfectly manicured hand, adorned with several expensive rings, gifts from my father, no doubt, or perhaps treats she bought herself with my money, hesitated before reaching for it. My father leaned forward, his jovial expression faltering, replaced by a flicker of apprehension. The paper crackled as she pulled out the contents. Her eyes scanned the first page. The color began to drain from her face, leaving her carefully applied makeup looking garish against her suddenly pale skin. My father peered over her shoulder. His ruddy complexion went ashen. What is this? My mother finally managed, her voice a strangled whisper, all the queenly confidence gone. The documents trembled in her hand. That, I said, my voice still even, still calm, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. That is a foreclosure notice. The final one, I believe. The bank will be repossessing the house in January. Silence. A stunned, absolute silence, broken only by the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Then, chaos. My mother let out a sound that was half shriek, half sob.
No.
This can't be. It's a mistake. My father slammed his fist on the table, rattling the crystal glasses. What in God's name have you done? He roared, his face contorted with a mixture of fury and disbelief. My brother, James, was on his feet. You? You did this? How could you? He hissed, his handsome face ugly with accusation. Chloe started to wail. Our home. Our childhood home. You monster. She's been paying your mortgage for the past 5 years, I stated, my gaze fixed on my parents. Addressing them, but letting the others hear. The mortgage you begged me to take over because you swore you were about to lose the house then. The one you haven't contributed a single penny towards, while you've been living your best lives, spending money you didn't have. The truth, stark and unadorned, landed in the festive room like a grenade. You stopped paying? My mother stammered, comprehension dawning, followed swiftly by a fresh wave of outrage. I couldn't afford to pay it anymore, Mom, I said, a bitter weariness lacing my voice. Not while also trying to, eat and pay my own rent. And certainly not while funding your shopping sprees and your golf club memberships and your generous loans to everyone else. They were utterly blindsided. They had played their game of exclusion, their little Christmas power play, expecting me to crumble, to absorb the humiliation as I always had. They never imagined I had a breaking point. They certainly never imagined I had a countermove, let alone one this devastating. They had assumed my silence, my long-suffering compliance, was permanent. They had mistaken my endurance for weakness. My father lunged to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. You ungrateful little. Sit down, Dad, I said, and the cold authority in my voice surprised even me. He actually faltered. Ungrateful. I repeated, a humorless laugh escaping me. I've spent the last 5 years of my life keeping a roof over your heads. A roof you were too irresponsible, too selfish, to maintain yourselves. I've sacrificed my savings, my future, my health. And what did I get in return? This, I gestured to my empty place setting, to the pile of presents meant for everyone but me. This is what my gratitude earned. The festive decorations, the twinkling lights, the scent of cinnamon and spice, all seemed to mock them now. Their faces, contorted with rage, disbelief, and a dawning, terrifying understanding of their new reality, were the ugliest Christmas ornaments I had ever seen. The power dynamic in the room, so carefully cultivated by them for so many years, had irrevocably, seismically, shifted. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was the one holding the documents that sealed their fate. Cards they had, in their arrogance and greed, effectively forced me to play. The screams, the accusations, the sheer, unadulterated panic, it was a symphony of their own making. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt a sliver of something that might have been peace. A cold, hard, satisfying peace. The immediate aftermath of that Christmas dinner was explosive. Accusations flew like poison darts. Threats were made, mostly empty bluster for my father. Tears flowed freely, my mother's, my sister's, tears of outrage and self-pity, not a drop of remorse among them. My brother, James, after the initial shock, attempted to mediate, to find a solution, which mostly involved him trying to guilt me into somehow reversing the foreclosure, as if I had a magic wand. "But where will they go?" he demanded, his brow furrowed with performative concern. "That," I'd replied, my voice devoid of inflection, "is no longer my problem. They have 2 adult children besides me. Perhaps it's your turn to step up." The suggestion was met with stunned silence. The idea of them taking on any actual responsibility for our parents was clearly an alien concept. Christmas was, as my sister dramatically declared to anyone who would listen, ruined, the family, or what passed for it, fractured. My siblings, caught between their loyalty to our parents' narrative of victimhood and the undeniable, uncomfortable truth I had laid bare, eventually chose the path of least resistance. They blamed me. I had rocked the boat. I had aired the dirty laundry. I had, in their eyes, made Mom and Dad homeless. My parents did not, in fact, end up on the street. They moved into a small, rather grim rental apartment on the other side of town. Their lifestyle, built on a foundation of my enforced austerity, took a spectacular nosedive. The new SUV was repossessed. The golf club membership lapsed. The lavish dinner parties became a distant memory. They tried, of course, to rally support, to paint me as the villain of the piece. Some distant relatives and fair-weather friends clucked sympathetically, but no one offered to take on their financial burdens. They tried to guilt me, naturally. My mother would call, her voice dripping with pathos, describing their squalid living conditions, their failing health, suddenly dire, their deep disappointment in me. My father sent a few rambling, angry emails. But something in me had irrevocably hardened. The well of my compassion, at least for them, had run dry.
I was sad, yes.
A deep, aching sadness for the family I had always wished for, the love I had craved, the acceptance that never came. Sad for the years I had wasted trying to earn it. But alongside the sadness, there was a profound, almost intoxicating sense of freedom. The crushing weight that had been my constant companion for 5 years was gone. Lifted. I could breathe again. The foreclosure, as expected, hit my credit score hard. It was a black mark that would take years to fade. But it was a price I was willing to pay. A trade-off. My financial reputation for my sanity, my future, my self-respect. It was, without a doubt, the best deal I'd ever made. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild my own life. I found a better-paying job. I started saving again, tiny amounts at first, but it was mine. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during the years of crisis. I even started dating. The world, which had shrunk to the narrow confines of work and worry, began to open up again, full of possibilities. It was a brutal lesson in boundaries, in self-preservation. Some betrayals don't just sting, they sever. They cauterize. And sometimes, the only way to truly win, the only way to escape a toxic dynamic, is to let the whole rotten structure collapse, even if you're the one who has to light the match, or in my case, withhold the payment. There was a quiet, almost grim satisfaction in knowing they had finally, inescapably, faced the consequences of their actions. Not through some vague, mystical karma that might or might not materialize, but as a direct, tangible result of their choices and my decision to stop shielding them from reality. The foreclosure wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. My beginning. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. What choices did you have to make? Drop a comment and please, if you feel so moved, subscribe. Sharing these stories helps us all feel a little less alone.